Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to a brand new video on the goddamn internet. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about James Fox again. This is like a part 3 to the series right now. James Fox is coming out with the documentary called The Program. Really excited for that. We're going to be looking a little bit about what David Grusch said and other whistleblowers, etc. So make sure you stay till the end because the best parts are at the end. And yeah, I appreciate you. Subscribe, notifications on. Let's watch.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
If an airline pilot has a sighting, that when he makes that report to the FAA, that it would come to Congress. But I was told that the intelligence community did not like that, and the amendment was not even heard in committee. I think it's time for this country to take back our country. We need to tell the folks at the Pentagon they work for us. Dadgummit, we don't work for them.
Tim Burchett, what a good man. Patriot. God damn it. How does he say it?
Also here in Washington is Stanton Friedman, a physicist who's been involved in nuclear space and research for such companies as General Electric, Westinghouse, and General Motors. He has studied and lectured on UFOs for almost 30 years.
My name is Leslie Kane, and I'm an investigative reporter, and I was one of 3 journalists who broke the story in December of 2017 about the Department of Defense secret program studying UFOs. And that story was kind of a catalyst for a lot of things that have happened since.
Whole flock of microphones there. They wanted me they wanted some comments from me, but I wasn't at liberty to do that. So all I could do is keep my mouth shut.
So that was supposedly some Roswell footage from people who witnessed it, first-hand witnesses, right? That's pretty crazy.
Chased a disc as high as his plane would go, or to the point where it was going to be dangerous if he went anymore. But he was really rattled. It was a disc, according to her. Then she said the other thing that he had told her was that they were followed by something to the moon. She did not say anything about an encounter on the moon, nothing that, but that there was something that they encountered that followed them to the moon that did not appear, that freaked him out.
I saw this illumination that was moving with respect to the stars. We were smart enough to not say, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us.
Of the governor of Arizona, Fife Simonton.
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking.
Of the fact that he saw the massive UFO that he said was just had to be otherworldly because it was over a mile from wingtip to wingtip.
This is the famous Phoenix Lights of
Phoenix Lights, 1997, March 13th.
In 1997, thousands of people in Phoenix, Arizona, witnessed a massive V-shaped formation of lights moving silently across the sky. Known as the Phoenix Lights, the phenomenon sparked widespread speculation about UFOs. While some officials claimed the lights were military flares, many witnesses remained convinced they saw something otherworldly.
So we're going into Phoenix, and I think it was Sky Harbor, and there's these bank of lights, 6 lights, in the shape of a triangle going back, right over the airport.
2 distinguished gentlemen, an astronaut, a governor, different views from what you've seen.
Well, I didn't see what he saw.
I'm not sure we
But
disagree.
you say you're waiting for people to come forward. People have come forward. High-ranking military officials have come forward and talked about the validity.
That was so long ago, right? Is Larry King still alive? Does anyone know?
Changing a little bit.
I think they are
recently,
changing.
yeah.
You had Neil Armstrong. I think he was winning the Congressional Medal of Honor or something in the 80s, and he goes,
"There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief."
And then he comes back, obviously, from the mission itself, and he just looks so spooked. He looks like a different
when he was
person.
in that what's that chamber they put everybody in remember that for several days they had to be in that chamber just in case.
Yeah. Well, he didn't speak to anybody for 3 weeks.
The look in his eyes.
The look in his eyes is
like they'd seen.
The dude really looks changed. What do you guys think that is? Like, I know a lot of people, when they go up so high and look across the earth, and they get that like realization and growth and whatever the fuck, right? Yeah, maybe it's that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Consciousness research.
For 40 years, I've been studying the properties of consciousness, and it goes throughout all of nature and matter. And it begins with the quantum property that when particles are in a process together and they go apart from each other, they maintain their correlation regardless of where they go.
You sense more, not less. And so the body is like a transmitter. Like you have in consciousness, you have the binding problem of consciousness, right? You have the battery. So you have like, you know, the occipital lobe, you have the, you know, the prefrontal cortex, reasoning. You have Wernicke's area, which is reading comprehension. You have Broca's area, which is speech. You have the cerebellum, which is movement, right? We have no idea, though, how those all mesh together to...
Have you guys ever heard of the split brain experiment? I'm curious to think what correlation that would have in this aspect. If anyone knows about that, let me know what you think in that aspect.
Create our seamless perception of, like, it's almost like you're watching a movie when you're conscious.
Yeah.
And so what is that? And then if you look at the radio, a radio has its own binding problem. So you have the capacitors, the battery, the antenna, you have all the constituent parts, but you have no idea how it's playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And you could take out a battery and, you know, it'll stop playing, but that's just one of the components. And in fact, you'd have to know that it's tapping into something much larger. It's tapping into, you know, an electromagnetic frequency that's allowing it to play the actual music.
The caudate, putamen, basal ganglia is at the core of many of the, let's say, the more mainstream things that we were claiming even before we had our first publication, that the caudate is basically is a central node involved in intuitive and other crystallized and fluid intelligence.
That could be the part that is the antenna.
Exactly.
Because when people
it's going on around us, but some people can detect it better than others, right?
And it allows you to, yes.
Yeah.
And it's the neuronal density in that area that determines your ability to do this. And it's this ability to act on instinct. So it's not based on the senses that you're picking up. In fact, that area, when hooked up to an fMRI, lights up when somebody makes a quote unquote brilliant move and go. And a brilliant move is a move that makes no sense rationally. It only makes sense in the context of a future endpoint of the person winning. So it's almost based on, you know, their opponent making some dumb move that they somehow psychically knew about.
Wow.
And to begin with. So that part of the brain, I do think that might be a really core part of all of this.
I didn't even know that even existed. I'd never even heard about remote viewing at that point. I didn't know.
In the 1980s, the Defense Intelligence Agency began Project Stargate.
It was top secret. It's actually beyond top secret.
Dean Radin, a scientist, worked on the program that employed about a dozen psychics and mediums. For what?
For espionage.
To see whether someone in the United States could spy on other countries from here.
Right.
Just using their mind.
Right.
Did it work?
It did work.
If anyone is interested in this weird fact, the CIA Project Stargate, the whole process, etc., everything, in its original form and complete state, is available on Pirate Bay, and you can torrent it there. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other places where it's published. So you can actually get this material and try learning this. So if anyone's interested in that, leave a comment or just ask me for the link. If you can't find it on your own, I'll help you out.
Zaire.
In 1995, former President Jimmy Carter revealed that the CIA, without his knowledge, consulted a psychic to locate a missing government plane in Africa. The plane had crashed in Zaire during his presidency, and despite extensive satellite searches, it was still missing. The psychic from California entered a trance and provided specific latitude and longitude coordinates. When the CIA focused their satellites on that spot, they found the plane.
That's pretty incredible.
It's incredible.
They
and it had,
found it.
Yeah, and it had Russian weaponry on board. Yeah. So it's, yeah. What are the chances?
I mean, that's pretty crazy, right? The fact that somebody could do this and the government knows about it, I think they must be ramping up spy missions and training people to do this and setting up divisions and funding this, because this is some disruptive knowledge, right?
With quantum mechanics, you had black body radiation, which occurred we figured that out in the 1860s, but we didn't exactly know that light came in quanta, and so there was no way to harness any of this stuff or do anything with it. You couldn't build, semiconductors and all the stuff we use, quantum field theory for now, because we just didn't understand it.
Right.
But there's this anomaly that's happening.
Right.
It's not fully repeatable. You can't instrumentalize it, but it's a thing that's measurable.
Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
It doesn't in fact, that leads to the next paradigm. Anomalies lead to the next paradigm. If you read Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolution, you have to systematically look at the anomalies because that breaks the current model.
The 1976 Tehran UFO incident involved radar and visual sightings of an unidentified flying object over Iran on the morning of September 19. Two F-4 Phantom II interceptors from the Imperial Iranian Air Force reported losing instrumentation and communications as they approached the object, which were restored upon withdrawal. One jet also experienced a temporary weapon systems failure while preparing to engage.
So these UAP can actually disable our jets and most advanced technology. So although we don't know about black projects, right? But so we have no chance. So we need Manhattan-style projects to catch up, right? I don't know.
The Defense Intelligence Agency documented the event in a great detail, and it was sent to NSA, the White House, and the CIA. The DIA assessment said this case is a classic that meets all necessary conditions for a legitimate study of the UFO phenomena.
And that didn't end well for him.
No, it didn't.
Yeah. But he goes, why?
You want to tell the audience what happened?
Yeah. So he was flying an F-4 Phantom jet. It was at night over Tehran, Iran. I want to say it was 75, but it could have been 76. Your audience got to look it up. UFO encounter over Tehran. His name was Parviz Jafari. And I remember I was working with Leslie Kane, and I was about to go down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon on a 2-week expedition, maybe even almost closer to 3-week expedition. And Leslie and I were putting on this event at the National Press Club in 2007, where we're going to have all these high-level military and government officials from like 7 different countries come and convene and talk about the reality of the UFO phenomenon. I thought it'd be a really good example to demonstrate the global nature of what's going on, right? So she calls me up, and I'm about to go down in a canoe, actually a wooden dory with this guy. I was shooting a short film on this guy who helped save the Grand Canyon from like 5 introduced dams during the 50s and 60s. His name was Martin Litton, amazing guy.
Sounds like a hero.
Yeah, total hero.
Cool.
And he was greeted like a king going down the Grand Canyon, Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. Anyway, I said, Leslie, I'm going to be off the radar. There's no phones. We have a satellite phone. We're under absolute extreme emergency. If one of us gets hurt, we can have the satellite phone. I'm not going to be reachable at all. She goes, oh my God, well, we got this event. What are you doing? Parviz Jafari, he needs, and it was like some astronomical amount of money to go from, because George Bush at the time had said that it was the axis of evil was Iran. And so now they're on the terrorist list and like trying to fly in the United States. And he's a general.
Iran, North Korea, and Russia?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember, but at the time it didn't help my efforts because I was like, oh God, now I need to fly this Iranian general in from Tehran, right? Yeah. So he had to fly to like Dubai or something for a week or two to apply for a visa, and I had to put him up in his hotel for like, I don't know if it was a week or it was 2 weeks, it was a long time. And it was like really expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars. And Leslie says, and that's not even sure that he's going to get his visa. What do you want to do? I said, so I have to spend, I'll just throw a number out there, $5,000, maybe $6,000, $7,000, whatever it was. I don't even know he's going to get a visa. And then I have to fly him out on top of all that. And she's like, yep. I said, let's go for it. Let's green light this. Yes, go. So I go down the Grand Canyon. I come out, got the good news. He got his visa. So he comes to D.C., and it's an incredible encounter. It was at night. He was scrambled to intercept some unknowns or an unknown, and he said this object was exhibiting a technology. This is the 70s that was just so far beyond his jet. Like, he's like, it would be here and then it would be here in the blink of an eye. Like, and it would traverse these miles you were talking about. Like you said, it would just stop, and it was, but he got a lock on it. And he got I guess he got the green light or the authority to shoot at it, right? So he locks on it and he tries to shoot it. And his whole cabin, everything locks up, and he starts spiraling out of the sky, or he loses control. And he was like, I thought I was going to have to eject at night over, Tehran. And then last minute he regained control. But then in retrospect, he told me on camera, it was a very intimate, cool moment, on reflection of, he had all these years to think about what had actually happened. And he goes, my biggest regret was, why did I take a hostile position on this thing? I could have communicated with it in a friendly way. Like we have an unknown and I just try to shoot it. I mean, so that was his biggest regret, you know? And it was very interesting, but there was also a psychic thing too. It's like, it read his mind that he was going to shoot it.
Yeah.
And then it locked up everything in his in his jet. That's so wild. Isn't that wild?
Well, you hear that a lot.
But it was so worth
like
all the effort we got. But people don't know the backstory. Like this, that was just one out of many. We ended up making I know what I saw.
Amazing movie.
About for its time. Yeah.
Spielberg.
I know.
Compelling.
Spielberg.
Who is, by the way, a total UFO nut. Is obsessed with He's obviously coming out with a new. Well, he came out with his Netflix thing, and then he's coming out with a new feature movie with Emily Blunt. I think in the next year or two. So
he told me about Rua.
He told you about the aerial.
Told me about aerial school in the 90s.
That's wild. So yeah, he knows his stuff.
He's like, we have a mutual friend, Janet Yang, that worked with him, and Janet. I was, of course, just young and naive enough to think that I could get hey, I'm doing a documentary on UFOs. Of course, Spielberg's going to meet with me, right? And that didn't happen.
The Wilson memo refers to a document allegedly summarizing a conversation between Dr. Eric Davis and Admiral Thomas Wilson regarding UFOs and alleged reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology. The memo, reportedly written in 2002, discusses Wilson's claims about the government's secretive programs related to UFOs, including discussions about unacknowledged special access programs.
So complicated.
Yeah.
God, I had tried to, I listened to Richard Dolan's review on it.
Yeah.
He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
Listened to that. I contacted everybody. In fact, some of the people I contacted were like, that's...
Yes, there have been ET visitation. There have been crashed craft. There have been material and bodies recovered.
So let me just remind you guys, this is an actual NASA scientist, okay? Official. What the fuck?
If you actually read the Atomic Energy Act, if something is not a nuke, but it has radiological energy coming off it, alpha, beta decay, whatever.
Same secrecy.
Same secrecy.
And so it immediately falls into this sort of DOE classification system.
Completely free from oversight, isn't that right?
Completely free, yeah, completely as compartmentalized from civilian government. So you have,
so if
NPQ.
you want to keep something super secret.
It's not TSSCI, it's NPQ. It's an entirely different classification system. And, it's all occurring in these incredibly sensitive areas as well, because the crashes sort of mostly occur there. That's a little known secret and that you are very aware of. And that language for the Atomic Energy Commission is using the McMahon Secrecy Act of 46. So Condon is basically writing up UFO secrecy before he then debunks the entire thing. And this is okay. It gets even deeper. I don't know how much you want me to keep.
I found
going,
really good color footage of Condon for the phenomenon.
Incredible.
That little smirky face he had on when he was.
It's so cynical.
I was like, this guy's mind's made up. I know exactly where this is going.
Well, his members of his staff are saying that they actively are not taking anything seriously.
Yeah.
He's meeting with Air Force Colonel Robert Hippler at the time, and Robert Hippler is saying, please show this as a waste of money so the Air Force can stop paying for this. And there are letters, there are transcripts that we have now between the two. And here's where it gets...
Killed it for so long.
Here's where it gets so weird. So there is an FBI field agent named Guy Hottel. He's a Washington field agent. And the #1 memo on the FBI's website, the most searched for memo is called the Hottel memo. And it's basically describing
Let's just take special notice of that the fact that this memo is the most searched for memo on the actual .gov site. Okay, that's pretty notable, right?
An Air Force technical officer coming upon a craft that has crashed, and you have the crew intact. And so it's, you know, this guy's claiming that there are aliens inside this craft who's crashed, and it's on the FBI's website. So you're like, what the hell is this? And it's a memo to Guy Hottel. So Guy Hottel is a guy who clearly is aware of the UFO issue on the Majestic 12 or whatever equivalent committee or whatever.
Stanton Friedman was a real advocate for that. He goes, if it's not called Majestic 12, there's a group just like.
If it's a legitimate document, it establishes 1, that a flying saucer crashed, 2, that the wreckage was recovered, 1947, 3, that the government has successfully kept that secret since that time, 4, that a very high-level group, including, as it happens, the first 4 directors of Central Intelligence, first Secretary of Defense, etc., was set up, established to deal with...
Former director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, was also denied access, as he stated in his own handwriting in July of 1947. We must insist upon full access to disks recovered. Hoover continued, the Army grabbed it and wouldn't let the Bureau have it for cursory examination.
I debated him on Larry King Live.
Oh, there you go.
If UFOs, when I use the word if, were buzzing around in our airspace, who would be best equipped to know about it?
Well, our government, perhaps.
Military?
Maybe.
So we've got the highest-ranking military officials in the world telling us right now that these things are real. We've got generals, we've got admirals, we've got colonels, we've got presidents, governors.
But it's not our. And I've said this. Everybody says, "Well, it's probably Russia. It's probably China." I mean, you're a military guy. If Russia had that, would they be bogged down in Ukraine? And if China had that, would they'd own us more than they do now?
Yeah.
And so there's no. The only other alternative is it's something we've reversed engineered, which means it's something we've recovered and are flying it around in our military space, or it's something from outer space. Either way, it's something from outer space.
It ain't us, you know.
Yeah.
And the Americans are like, oh, well, it could be the Russians. I was like, hear that? Oh, it could be no, it's not the Russians.
Yeah.
How do I know? I've been there.
Right. Yeah.
They're shrugging their shoulders just like we are.
100%.
You know?
空にこんなものが目の前に張り付いてた。一歩踏み出してみたら消えて。
So supposedly UFOs and extraterrestrials have access to the 4th dimension, which is time, and they are not bound by it, which is really weird to think about and not really imaginable when you have no reference point, right?
The overall effort to study saucers was called Project Sign, with headquarters at Wright Field in Ohio. In 1949, Sign personnel wrote a top-secret report concluding UFOs were extraterrestrial craft. When the report made it to the desk of Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg, though, he rejected it and ordered all copies burned. This rejection from the top was, in the view of many, the death knell for objective study of UFOs.
Dave Grusch told me he's going back to D.C. sometime in the next week or so. And I said, Dave, please do something for me. Tell Dr. Kirkpatrick that Dr. Jacobs says, fuck you.
That's unbelievable.
He was so upset because apparently he went and met with him. He gave him all the documents and the case that happened and told him where the footage was or where it should have been and it was taken. And I guess Kirkpatrick just completely dismissed all of that.
He's been traumatized because
Dr. Jacobs was, I've never seen, he's so articulate and he's so funny and he's so, I just love that guy.
Well, they took him out as a photo instrumentation specialist, and then they said that he never worked at the Air Force, which is ridiculous.
All the documentation, and I covered it out of the blue.
So that makes me think a lot about what not Robert Greer, what the fuck, the guy from Area 51, but Robert Lazar, yeah. This is starting to sound a lot like Robert Lazar. They removed all his info to corroborate where he worked, all that stuff, etc. That's pretty cool, right?
Exactly. And then his former boss came out later and was like, "No, this guy worked for me." Like, what are you talking? But they tried to erase him.
Oh my god!
It's really messed up. And aliens at the foot of his bed.
I would have been probably 6 or 7 because it was in our first house that my parents had bought in Windsor, of little men in the bedroom. You know, I mean, I was awake. I knew they were there. I could see them.
room and stuff. And so you have, some...
So that's a really weird story we have from Gary Nolan right there. He saw these weird ass shit. Really interesting stories. I'm thankful that he tells them. I wonder if it has any accuracy to it, right? I wonder what it is.
Chuck Clark, a self-described military watchdog, says FBI agents and other lawmen used a sealed search warrant to seize his property, including computers and personal files.
Bob Lazar was just exploding in the headlines. It was all over the place. It was in the 90s. I think he went public in 89, but in any case, it was in the early mid-90s, whatever, and everyone's talking about Bob Lazar and his tape. He is a orange disc-shaped thing just wobbling in like it looks like magic, the way it just kind of just hovers there like this. And I tell you, man, I was like, holy shit, where did you get this? So I was telling this.
So that kind of reaction is comparable to the quote-unquote G-lock that David Grusch has described.
The footage is compelling, not convincing. It's from 1995. The tape had been worn down. It's been played probably over 100 times, and so the quality is not great, and everything about it screams bullshit, which is the true reason I haven't released it.
But before that happened, and right around that time, this what really frustrates me, I contacted George Knapp, and I said, George, this as I was wrapping up the phenomenon, I said, George, you have got to go and get this tape from Chuck Clark, or at least see it. And George was like, oh yeah, I know Chuck Clark. I did a whole story on him for the local news station. His place was ransacked by the feds. You know, they came in and I don't know what he had. Maybe he had photographs of planes and hangars. I don't know, but he had that, or maybe it was that footage. Don't know. I said, you got to go. You got to go. And I kept telling him, like, I can't do it, but I'm telling you, I've seen this tape and it's amazing. And like, you got to go find. He's like, I'll get on it. And I kept pushing George, and I like George Knapp a lot.
I like George Knapp a lot too. Him and Jeremy Corbell, they're a great team. Great videos they release on Weaponized. And yeah, George Knapp is like the G-man from real life.
And I have tremendous respect for him. And I kept pushing him, and one day he goes, listen, man, you're not my damn wife. Or, you know, my girl would stop needling me. Just stop. I said, he goes, I'm really big. I said, okay, sorry. I'm just trying to hand you what I feel is the best. You've done all this reporting for all these years on Area 51 and Bob Lazar and UFOs at Area 51. And I saw the best footage I've ever seen in my life out there. So George Knapp doesn't go out there. The guy that gave it to Chuck Clark was a TV producer in Los Angeles, and he had it on like a Beta SP tape and a master, I'm told. And from that master, he gave a copy to Chuck Clark, right? So as soon as the private eye and got the name of that individual, we went after him, and he had just died. So if we would have gotten there, if George would have gotten there just a month or two earlier, we probably would have had the master on Beta SP.
Oh man!
So we contacted the guy's network where he worked. Then we contacted his son, got in touch with his son, and his son couldn't be bothered. He's like, my dad just died. And you're talking to me about a UFO tape? Like, you know what I mean? And so it might be ripe. I can't really do it because Chuck doesn't like me. And now I'm very proud of it. I think it's a very good, you know what I mean?
By the assertion that the U.S. government has spaceships of non-human intelligence in their possession.
That kind of revelation unearths people's beliefs.
I would go to jail to say things that I've been exposed to in the program.
No, the Gary McKinnon, who I've known about for a while. He's, you know, a story that's out there. This hacker from the UK.
Yes.
Who is hacking into like American military databases, biggest hack in U.S. history. He's getting into NSA archives.
NSA, DIA, CIA, NASA, you name it.
And a page comes up, and it's this list of 11 or 12 off-planet officers.
After a year, he got pay dirt.
And I found an Excel spreadsheet that was actually called, or at least in the heading of the column, it said non-terrestrial officers. And I was like, my God, that's just Non-terrestrial officers.
Non-terrestrial officers with ranks and names, and then a separate sheet with tabs for material transfer between ships. And these were, I mean, I don't remember the names now. It's a long time ago. A lot of people give me a hard time for not remembering the names and stuff, but it was a long time ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So nary, but
Yeah.
you know, Hynek, you know, who's head of the Israeli Space Force, who.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, he
That was
writes
like 2 years ago,
yeah,
right?
2 years ago, he writes his biography. And he
It
says,
was like,
yeah, he says,
oh my
says
God, are you kidding me?
there's a galactic federation. He says that there are bases on Mars, and you know,
People don't even know how to that, like, just right over the head of almost everybody.
Yeah.
When you make those kind of statements, because not to say they're not true, or maybe they are true, I don't know. But it's like, I'll give you an example of how it's almost too much to process. Because when I did Moment of Contact, I just got back from Brazil, and I had this like news organization at my house with Leslie Kane interviewing me, and oh, we're so excited, let's talk about Brazil. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk about that case because they weren't ready for it, right? Live aliens, all the rest of it. And forward, like he put in his credibility, he lost his position, like he at great personal sacrifice, he came forward. The implications of what he's saying are so profound.
Yeah, beyond.
How could you possibly not put some resources and follow up? I mean, News Nation's really the only outfit out there really sticking their teeth into this topic, right?
Yeah. Well, I did a piece with them too. But,
but
I kept
you know
thinking
what I
the
mean?
whole time, why am I in this position? I mean, I've become close with him, but I'm like, you know, it was
you did a great piece, and it was. But my point is, why isn't Fox News, CNN?
No,
like,
totally. I kept
they
thinking the
should
whole time.
all
I was
be
like,
doing.
they
They
should
have
have-
resources and contacts.
Well, the backstory is they had an opportunity. The New York, I mean, Leslie Kane published the initial article that prompted the whole thing. But she had to do it in the debrief because Julian Barnes, who's
I know, I was right there when it was all going
he
down.
has a bias against the whole. I spoke to her at the.
Julian Barnes has a bias.
He hates the UFOs,
And it was their biggest story in 2017, right? Wasn't it the most popular stories they've ever published?
When I sat next to her at the congressional hearing, and I was like, "Why didn't that go in the New York Times?" He was like, he was like, maybe I'll cut this if I'm throwing her under the bus by saying this, but like she was like, they just are anti.
It was going to go to the Washington Post, and it was going to go to Politico,
which shows that
it would have gone to Politico, but Politico needed another week, and I guess Grusch was really worried. I mean, it had to come out.
Yeah, because his name was out already.
And the News Nation piece was going to run, and they were going to run that. Yeah, and the execution of how that all came about, and it wasn't anyone in particular's fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess the New York Times was looking into it for quite some time, and did they take a pass?
Well, so Leslie Kane is a staff writer for the New York Times. I think her default was, I want to do this on the New York Times. But
Yeah,
I think,
that's what was their number one.
I think they were like, you can't do this here, which is insane.
I remember when the New York Times story came out, that was massive because it doesn't get much more mainstream than that, and the footage shows how shocked the pilots are, and it's like a scene straight out of sci-fi. So it was really cool, and it demanded everyone's attention, you know.
Because I guess they wanted to speak to one of the 40 witnesses. Fine, you should be able to speak to one of the 40 witnesses. However, not saying that him coming out is worthy of a story given Dave's credentials is showing that you have a complete bias. It's ridiculous because that is a story.
Yeah,
and it's a story when you
then
have
you see the publications like the stories that had been published in the New York Times post.
Yeah. Oh,
for the most
give
part,
me a break. They were
like, please.
Well, they've been in April of 22 or something. They were saying that COVID was zoonotic origin. Like after everyone and their mother was saying this is obviously came from a lab, they were sticking with the idiot party line. So like, I don't know. I
think some of their contacts in the intel said, you want to continue a nice relationship?
Of course, yeah.
There's nothing to the story.
No, that's exactly what
happened.
Drop it. That's exactly what happened.
Don't you think?
I know that, and I've also I've helped since then with trying to get Grusch's op-ed out or whatever a little bit, and like I see the pain he's going through.
I worked so hard to portray him in the light that he deserves in the program.
I think he did.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I hope he sees that.
Yeah,
I'm sure he will.
I told him that. Yeah, and he was like, "Awesome."
Oh, I'm really glad. Yeah, because I don't blame him. I mean, he was a bit skittish, and he was very selective with a handful of interviews that he gave. You being one of them, and And I talked to somebody there, and even Leslie tried to get him for an upcoming production. He's like, I'm just not really doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
I don't either. I don't. Yeah.
But I really tried to do his story justice, and not for any other reason that I believe him. I believe him, and I think he merits that level of coverage.
I fully agree. Yeah. James, this has been an honor, man. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.